morning. Now, all this comes against a backdrop of talks resuming in the Qatari capital, Doha, to try and reach some kind of ceasefire deal between the two sides. We can speak to Nawaf Al-Thani, who's a former defence attaché for the Qatari government. Thank you for joining us here on BBC News. These talks, as we know, have ebbed and flowed over the last few months. What's your assessment of where they are currently?
Thank you for having me. Well, Anna, it continues, unfortunately, during the 8th day of Ramadan and with this new attack on the Al-Shifa hospital with, as the Qataris have described it, optimism. The last statement that was put out from the Qatari Foreign Ministry last week was that it remains hopeful that before Eid, which is around 3 weeks from now, there would be a ceasefire. However, that is a long way, and with everything developing in the Al-Shifa area and everyone also watching what's happening or probably going to happen around Rafah, we're going against the clock, unfortunately, and the death toll and the humanitarian crisis is rising in Gaza, as you know.
What are the biggest points of difference between the two sides at the moment?
Well, obviously, the Qatari government are playing it very close to the vest. They haven't released with their partners, the Americans and the Egyptians, any details about it. But we understand that there are sticking points from the reports that we've seen out between the Netanyahu government and the Hamas representative of the political office, dealing with the future of Hamas and the situation on the operations on the ground, the military operation, the kinetic effects. Now, what exactly is the sticking point? As I said, it is something that the negotiators keep very close to their vest. But I think in the coming days, we will see more out of the information coming out, as we've seen in the past, about what seems to be the sticking point. But unfortunately, as I said, with the continuation of the plan of the Netanyahu government of going forward with an operation in Rafah, and what we're seeing now at the Shifa hospital, maybe the 4th or the 5th incursion in that area, it's really counterproductive, unfortunately, to be doing that and to be negotiating in good faith.
These talks are inevitably slow as well, aren't they? Because, of course, everything has to go through Qatar and Egypt at times as well. We heard suggestions in the Israeli media that the negotiating team had asked for a broader mandate from Mr. Netanyahu, the ability to make more choices themselves. We know that the Hamas team often have to try and go back and locate senior Hamas leaders to run things past them. It all makes this a slower process, doesn't it?
Yes, unfortunately, this is the nature of these negotiations. Both the Israeli side have to go back to the Prime Minister in Israel, and the Hamas political office have to organize with Hamas back in Gaza, with everything going on, obviously. Now, we've seen in the past, for instance, that the lead negotiators for the Israelis would approve something, go back to Netanyahu, and will be refused, and vice versa, obviously, on the Hamas side as well. So these things are very delicate. The Qataris and the Americans, with the Egyptians at times, as you mentioned, Anna, have been pushing both sides to move forward in negotiations, but the nature of the negotiations, the mechanics of the negotiations, and the ongoing military kinetic operations on the ground that are developing hour by hour, as we are seeing today with Al-Shifa, does make things more complicated.
Nawaf Al-Thani, thank you for joining us, former defence attaché to the Qatari government.